There comes a time in life when the applause fades, the support disappears, and the people you expected to stand beside you are nowhere to be found. In those moments, you are faced with a powerful choice. Will you abandon yourself as well, or will you finally choose yourself? Choosing yourself does not mean you become selfish or careless about others. No. It means you finally acknowledge that your life has value, your time has meaning, and your well-being matters. You were not created to be constantly broken just to keep others comfortable. And sometimes people do not support you not because you are wrong, but because your growth reminds them of what they neglected in themselves. And instead of understanding this, we often internalize the silence. We begin to question our worth. This is where education of the heart and mind becomes essential. You must learn that lack of support is not always lack of value. When no one checks on you, you learn to check on yourself. When no one believes in you, you learn discipline. When no one helps you, you learn skills. These are not punishments, they are lessons. Life has a way of training us in solitude. It strips away distractions so that we can hear our own conscience clearly. And when you begin to listen to that inner voice, the one that calls you toward goodness, growth, and integrity, you realize you were never truly alone. Choosing yourself also means choosing what is right over what is easy. It means walking away from environments that drain your peace, even if staying would make you look accepted. It means saying no without guilt and yes with intention. This is not rebellion, this is maturity. Do not rush the process. Growth is quiet, healing is slow, strength is built in moments no one sees. Be patient with yourself. You are unlearning years of doubt and replacing them with clarity and purpose. And remember this, people may not clap for your progress, but the results will speak. The confidence you gain, the peace you protect, and the character you build will eventually become your testimony. So if today you feel unseen, unsupported, or forgotten, do not despair. This may be the very moment life is teaching you the most important lesson of all. When no one else chooses you, choose yourself. And choose yourself wisely with humility, discipline, and purpose, because once you do, you will never abandon yourself again. Because self-worth begins with understanding that your value is inherent, not assigned by people, achievements, or approval. Many individuals grow up believing they matter only when they are useful, praised, or needed. This mindset creates dependency on external validation and slowly erodes inner stability. Choosing yourself starts with correcting this misunderstanding. You do not earn the right to matter, you already matter. Responsibility enters when you accept that while you cannot control how others treat you, you are accountable for how you treat yourself, your thoughts, decisions, habits, and boundaries. And taking responsibility for yourself means recognizing that neglecting your own well-being is not humility. It is harm. Often people confuse self-sacrifice with self-erasure. They give endlessly, tolerate disrespect, and silence their needs, believing this makes them virtuous. In reality, responsibility requires balance. You are entrusted with your physical health, mental clarity, emotional stability, and moral direction. Ignoring these areas does not benefit others in the long term. It only leads to burnout, resentment, and loss of direction. Choosing yourself means you begin to manage this trust consciously. Self-worth is also shaped by the standards you allow in your life. When you accept poor treatment repeatedly, you silently teach yourself that you deserve no better. Responsibility involves reassessing these standards and correcting them. This does not require confrontation or conflict. It begins internally. You decide what behavior you will tolerate, what values you will compromise, and what environments you will remain in. These decisions educate your mind and discipline your character. Over time, they rebuild self-respect, which is the practical expression of self-worth. Another aspect of responsibility is ownership of personal growth. It is easy to blame circumstances, upbringing, or people for where you are. While these factors influence you, they do not absolve you of responsibility for where you are going. Choosing yourself means shifting from a mindset of complaint to one of accountability. You ask, what can I learn? What must I improve? What habits are holding me back? This approach is educational rather than emotional. It transforms pain into information and failure into instruction. Self-worth strengthens when you keep promises to yourself. Many people break commitments to themselves while maintaining commitments to others. This imbalance sends a message to the mind that your own goals are optional. Responsibility corrects this by emphasizing consistency. When you say you will rest, you rest. When you say you will improve a skill, you practice. When you say you will leave what harms you, you act. Each fulfilled promise becomes evidence that you can be trusted by yourself, and trust is the foundation of confidence. Okay, choosing yourself also requires responsibility and thought management. Not every thought deserves attention or belief. Negative self-talk, comparison, and excessive guilt often operate unchecked, slowly weakening self-worth. Responsibility means educating yourself to question these thoughts rather than obey them. You learn to separate facts from assumptions, mistakes from identity, and criticism from truth. This mental discipline protects your dignity and prevents emotional self-sabotage. Self-worth is reinforced through responsible use of time and energy. Time wasted on proving yourself to those who have already decided not to value you is time stolen from growth. Choosing yourself means redirecting energy toward learning, service, skill building, and self-improvement. This is not isolation, it is prioritization. You learn that your time is limited and must be invested wisely. Responsibility teaches you that where your time goes, your life follows. Responsibility toward yourself includes forgiveness without excuses. You acknowledge mistakes honestly, learn from them thoroughly, and release excessive self-punishment. Self-worth does not grow through harshness. It grows through accountability paired with mercy. You hold yourself to standards, but you also allow room to improve. This balance creates resilience rather than fragility. Okay, in choosing yourself through self-worth and responsibility, you stop waiting for permission to live well. You become both the student and the guardian of your own life, making decisions rooted in awareness, discipline, and respect for the person you are becoming. Resilience through neglect or rejection develops when a person learns to reinterpret painful experiences as sources of instruction rather than permanent judgments. Being ignored, overlooked, or dismissed often triggers feelings of inadequacy, but these emotions arise not from the event itself, rather from the meaning attached to it. When rejection is seen as proof of worthlessness, it weakens the individual. When it is understood as a signal for growth, redirection, or independence, it becomes strengthening. Education of the mind begins by separating personal value from external response. Neglect often teaches self-reliance before a person feels ready for it. When support is absent, there is a natural temptation to withdraw or surrender effort. Resilience forms when one resists that impulse and instead adapts. This adaptation is not emotional suppression, it is skill development. Learning to plan independently, solve problems alone, and regulate emotions without reassurance builds internal stability. Over time, this stability reduces the need for constant validation and creates confidence that is not easily shaken by silence or indifference. Rejection exposes unrealistic expectations placed on people. Many individuals assume that effort guarantees appreciation or that kindness ensures loyalty. When these assumptions are challenged, the initial response is disappointment. Resilience grows when expectations are corrected rather than replaced with bitterness. Understanding that people act based on their capacity, fears, and priorities, not your worth, allows emotional detachment without hostility. This awareness protects mental health and prevents repeated emotional injury. Periods of neglect also reveal personal patterns that require adjustment. Being repeatedly dismissed may indicate misaligned environments, ineffective communication, or misplaced trust. Resilience is educational when these patterns are examined honestly. Instead of asking, why does this keep happening to me? The more productive question becomes, what must I learn from this? This approach transforms victimhood into responsibility and reaction into strategy. Rejection also refines purpose. When doors close, attention is forced inward. This inward focus helps individuals distinguish between goals pursued for approval and goals aligned with values. Many people abandon meaningful ambitions simply because they lack encouragement. Resilience is demonstrated when one continues regardless of recognition. Working without applause strengthens sincerity and clarifies intention. Over time, this discipline leads to deeper satisfaction than external praise ever could. Emotional resilience requires regulation, not denial. Neglect hurts, and acknowledging that pain is necessary for recovery. Remaining within that pain indefinitely weakens judgment. Resilience involves processing emotions constructively through reflection, journaling, prayer, or learning rather than acting impulsively. This process educates emotional intelligence, teaching when to pause, when to speak, and when to walk away. Emotional maturity develops when reactions are guided by understanding rather than impulse. Social rejection often redirects relationships. It highlights who contributes to growth and who benefits from access without investment. Resilience grows when one learns to distance without resentment. Letting go of one-sided connections creates space for healthier relationships or productive solitude. This is not isolation, it is refinement. Quality replaces quantity, and peace replaces constant emotional labor. Neglect also trains patience. Progress made without support is slower but more durable. When individuals build themselves quietly, they develop endurance. They become less dependent on immediate results and more focused on long-term development. This patience is educational. It teaches that meaningful outcomes require sustained effort, regardless of recognition. Those who learn this lesson are less likely to quit when conditions are difficult. Rejection strengthens moral independence. Without social pressure or approval, individuals are forced to define their own standards. This autonomy builds integrity. Decisions are no longer made to please others, but to remain aligned with conscience and values. Resilience becomes evident when one continues to act correctly even when no reward is visible. Through neglect and rejection, resilience is formed not by hardening the heart, but by strengthening understanding. Pain becomes a teacher, silence becomes direction, and isolation becomes preparation. What once felt like abandonment gradually reveals itself as training for independence, clarity, and inner strength. Inner alignment begins with clarity about values. When external voices are loud and opinions are many, it becomes easy to live reactively, adjusting behavior to match expectations rather than principles. Misalignment occurs when actions are driven by approval, fear, or convenience instead of conviction. Choosing yourself in this context means identifying what you stand for and allowing those standards to guide decisions consistently. This process is educational because it requires reflection, learning, and honest self-assessment rather than emotion-driven reactions. Moral grounding provides stability during uncertainty. When validation is absent, values function as an internal compass. Without this compass, individuals often drift, adopting beliefs temporarily to feel accepted. Inner alignment prevents this instability by anchoring behavior to ethical foundations such as honesty, responsibility, compassion, and restraint. These principles are not situational. They apply whether one is observed or alone. Living by them builds self-respect, which is essential when external affirmation is missing. Alignment also requires consistency between belief and behavior. Many people understand what is right but fail to practice it under pressure. This inconsistency weakens trust in oneself. Choosing inner alignment means closing the gap between intention and action. Each decision becomes an exercise in integrity. When actions reflect values repeatedly, confidence strengthens not because of praise, but because of internal coherence. This coherence reduces anxiety, as there is no need to maintain multiple versions of oneself. Your external validation often creates dependency, while inner alignment creates independence. When decisions rely on approval, self-direction is compromised. Moral grounding restores autonomy by shifting focus from outcome to correctness. Instead of asking, will this be accepted? The aligned individual asks, is this right? This reframing educates judgment and reduces emotional volatility. Even when outcomes are unfavorable, peace remains because the decision was principled. Inner alignment also protects against moral compromise during hardship. In moments of loneliness or rejection, individuals may be tempted to lower standards to regain acceptance. Moral grounding resists this pressure. It reinforces the understanding that temporary comfort gained through compromise often results in long-term regret. Choosing alignment over acceptance requires discipline, but it preserves dignity. Over time, this discipline becomes strength, making future compromises less appealing. Alignment is maintained through regular self-correction. No one remains perfectly aligned at all times. Mistakes occur, priorities shift, and pressures increase. Moral grounding does not demand perfection, it demands awareness. When misalignment is recognized, responsibility lies in adjustment, not denial. This process educates humility and resilience. Correcting oneself early prevents deeper internal conflict and reinforces commitment to values. Inner alignment also influences emotional regulation. When actions align with beliefs, emotions stabilize. Guilt, confusion, and internal conflict decrease. Emotional distress often stems not from external difficulty, but from internal contradiction. Moral grounding reduces this contradiction by ensuring that choices reflect values, even under stress. This clarity allows emotions to be processed calmly rather than chaotically. Choosing inner alignment also means accepting that being principled may result in isolation. Not all values are popular, and not all integrity is rewarded immediately. Education in this area involves understanding delayed outcomes. Respect, trust, and credibility often develop over time. Those who remain grounded despite lack of recognition eventually build reputations based on consistency rather than performance. This long-term perspective sustains commitment when immediate feedback is absent. Alignment requires intentional learning. Values must be studied, refined, and understood deeply to be applied effectively. Surface-level beliefs collapse under pressure. Moral grounding strengthens when individuals engage with ethical teachings, reflect on consequences, and observe examples of principled behavior. This learning transforms values from abstract ideals into practical guides. Through inner alignment and moral grounding, individuals remain anchored regardless of external turbulence. Decisions become deliberate, behavior becomes consistent, and identity becomes stable. When no one else affirms the path, alignment ensures that the path remains clear, rooted in understanding rather than approval. Growth through patience and consistency is built on understanding how real change occurs. Many people expect immediate results from effort and quick relief from hardship. When progress is slow or invisible, motivation weakens. Education in this area begins with correcting unrealistic timelines. Personal development follows gradual patterns, not sudden transformations. Skills take repetition, character forms through habits, and emotional strength develops through repeated endurance. Recognizing this process prevents discouragement and protects commitment. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active endurance with discipline. It involves continuing effort even when results are delayed. Choosing yourself through patience means refusing to abandon improvement simply because recognition has not arrived. Each day of consistent action, no matter how small, contributes to long-term outcomes. This perspective shifts focus from outcomes to process. Instead of asking whether effort is being noticed, the patient individual evaluates whether effort is being maintained. Consistency transforms intention into identity. Occasional effort produces temporary change, but repeated behavior reshapes character. When actions align with goals regularly, they become habits. These habits operate even when motivation is low. Education here lies in understanding that motivation fluctuates, but discipline sustains progress. Choosing consistency means acting according to commitment rather than mood. Over time, this reliability builds self-trust and internal stability. Growth often feels stagnant before it becomes visible. Many improvements occur beneath the surface, learning, strengthening, correcting, before they manifest externally. Without patience, these unseen stages are mistaken for failure. Consistent effort during this phase is critical. Individuals who continue despite lack of evidence are those who eventually experience lasting change. This teaches perseverance and reinforces belief in long-term investment. Patience also refines judgment. Quick results often come with shallow foundations, while slow progress allows for reflection and adjustment. Through consistent effort, mistakes are identified and corrected early. This learning process improves effectiveness and reduces repetition of errors. Growth becomes intentional rather than reactive. Education through patience trains individuals to observe patterns, assess outcomes, and refine methods rather than abandoning effort prematurely. Consistency requires structure. Relying on inspiration leads to irregular action. Establishing routines, schedules, and measurable goals supports steady progress. Choosing yourself means organizing life to support growth rather than waiting for ideal conditions. This responsibility builds discipline. Over time, disciplined structure reduces decision fatigue and increases efficiency, making improvement sustainable. Patience also strengthens emotional resilience. When expectations are adjusted to match reality, disappointment decreases. Consistent effort teaches emotional regulation by reducing impulsive reactions to setbacks. Instead of frustration, challenges are met with analysis. This calm approach preserves energy and focus. Emotional maturity develops as reactions become proportional rather than excessive. Growth through patience involves accepting repetition. Mastery requires doing simple tasks repeatedly, often without excitement. Many abandon growth because they seek constant novelty. Fordere. Education here involves understanding that repetition builds proficiency. Whether in learning, behavior change, or self-improvement, consistent repetition strengthens competence and confidence. This process is quiet but effective. Consistency also protects against comparison. When focus remains on daily effort, external timelines lose influence. Progress is measured against personal improvement rather than others' achievements. This reduces envy and impatience. Choosing yourself means respecting your pace and conditions. Patience teaches that growth is personal and cannot be standardized. Delayed results often test belief. Continuing without immediate reward requires faith in process. This faith is strengthened by consistency. Each completed action reinforces trust that effort matters. Over time, accumulated effort produces momentum. What once required discipline begins to feel natural. Growth becomes self-sustaining. Through patience and consistency, improvement becomes inevitable. Progress may be slow, but it becomes stable. Each day of effort compounds into lasting change. Choosing yourself through this approach builds endurance, discipline, and quiet confidence rooted in persistence rather than speed.